Members of Parliament will have seen, as I have, the appalling and unacceptable scenes at Glastonbury on Saturday, where chants of death to the IDF and river to the sea, amongst others, were broadcast to the nation. I've been in touch with my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, as to whether there has been any criminal offence committed. The House will know that decisions relating to specific cases are an operational matter for the police. Avon and Somerset Police have confirmed that video evidence is being assessed by officers to determine whether any offences may have been committed. They have just announced in the last few minutes that this has now taken the form of a criminal investigation. So, as I hope members will appreciate, it therefore would not be appropriate for the government to comment on an ongoing investigation at this stage. But let me be clear that this government will not tolerate anti-Semitism. It has no place in our society. It is a poison and a cancer that must be rooted out, and we will be relentless in our work to do so. This government works closely with the police and with community partners to ensure the safety and security of Jewish communities, and we will continue to do so following the enormous impact that these events have had on them over the weekend. Let me turn now to the role of the BBC. On Saturday afternoon, just after the broadcast, I called the Director General to ask for an explanation and what immediate steps the BBC leadership intended to take. As the Prime Minister said yesterday, it is essential that the BBC explains how these scenes came to be broadcast. The BBC has rightly apologised and took the immediate decision not to put this content on iPlayer. I welcome that. However, key outstanding questions remain, including why this performance was broadcast live, given the concerns regarding other acts in the weeks preceding the festival, why the feed wasn't immediately cut when the chants of death to the IDF began, and what due diligence was done prior to the decision to broadcast this particular act to the nation. I expect answers to these questions without delay. I have made that view clear to the BBC leadership, and I will, of course, update the House as soon as I can. Over the weekend and this morning, I have also had conversations with members of the Jewish community, including those who were present at Glastonbury. They have raised a number of concerns about imagery and slogans that were on display at the festival this weekend. And I am told that this led them to establish their own safe space at the festival. As a government, we take this incredibly seriously. We are urgently looking into the specifics of these alarming reports and reaching out to the festival organisers. Finally, I want to be clear about the government's role. As a government, we strongly support freedom of expression, and as Culture Secretary, I will robustly defend the independence of our broadcasters and the right to artistic expression. But we do not accept that incitement to violence, hate speech or anti-Semitism is art. There is a clear difference between speaking out for Palestine, which is the right of everybody in this House and everybody in our country, and anti-Semitism, which is not and which will never be. When the rights and safety of people and communities are at risk, and when our national broadcaster fails to uphold its own standards, we will intervene. In the coming days, I will be having further conversations with the BBC and festival organisers to ensure that lessons are learnt and action is taken.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I have always been a strong advocate for the BBC. It is a cornerstone of British public life with a proud history of cultural contribution. The events of this weekend, however, have made this incredibly difficult. During the coverage of the festival, the artist, as we've heard, real name Pascal Robinson Foster, led the crowd in a chant of death to the IDF, a moment which extraordinarily was transmitted by the BBC. Let me be clear, a national broadcaster funded by the licence payers must adhere to the highest standards of impartiality, responsibility and commitment to social cohesion. And I hope we can all agree that in this instance it has failed profoundly. Free speech and political activism are the sign of a healthy democracy, essential to it. But when you cross the line to incitement to violence, then there must be a consequence. However, broadcasting is not a passive act. Every second of broadcast transmitted is an active choice. Airing Robinson Foster's hateful rhetoric wasn't just a lapse in editorial judgment. It was a disgraceful affront to the Jewish community and a violation of the BBC's own public charter, and to entertain without undermining the fundamental values of our society. As the Secretary of State said, let us be clear that hateful rhetoric should never be cloaked as artistic expression. But it also raises fundamental questions about the BBC's institutional culture. This is a broadcaster that has time and again given airtime to representatives and supporters of Hamas, while refusing to clearly identify the group as what it is, a terrorist organisation. It has repeatedly failed to call out anti-Semitic rhetoric when it emerges under the guise of political commentary, and has faced serious allegations of minimising attacks on Jewish communities. The BBC's decision to also broadcast material from NECAP, a group whose members have openly called for members of Parliament to be killed, is as indefensible as it is shocking. We have already seen the devastating consequences of political violence in this country, with the loss and the tragic murder of Joe Cox and Sir David Amess. For the BBC to amplify voices advocating similar violence is grossly irresponsible. Even more troubling is that a leading member of the group is currently facing a terrorism charge. That fact alone should have prompted an immediate editorial intervention. Instead, the BBC gave this group a platform on a publicly funded service. I welcome the fact that the Secretary of State has spoken to the Director General, and I'm grateful to her for coming to the House to report on that exchange.